Greetings, dear people, whoever's watching. This is Terra Illumination, aka TL. This is yet another Astrodoodle. It is Friday evening over here in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, 4th of February, 2022. I want to show you an Astrodoodle for 13th of November, 2023. There's a reason why, and I'm going to show you in a minute. November 2023 is going to change the whole world economy. I can't be more accurate than this, and I'll show you why again in a few minutes. So what's happening in November 2023? Well, you could say it's the great financial reset, and it isn't just a concept anymore. It isn't just a fear porn, from Klaus and his buddies and Jerome and all the folks at the very top of the Fed, the US FED and all of that crowd. I've talked about it many times. It's a dangerous subject, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm just going to, I don't really know what to say much more, but there is like a pyramid of power sitting on top of the planet Earth. You could call it a corporatocracy, as represented by Pluto and Capricorn at the very high degrees here that are conjoined very closely to Pluto in Capricorn at 27 degrees of the United States birth chart. We've talked about this many times before. Right now, the United States is dealing with its own natural natal Pluto return. It's about a 245-year cycle, I believe, something like that. And it started in 4th of July, 1776. And here we are at the very, very, very tippy end of the Pluto cycle for that very, very first Pluto cycle for this thing that we call the United States. Now, you have to understand that the moon goes through Capricorn in about 2.5 days. Same thing for Aquarius. The moon is very consistent. It takes about 2.5 days to go through each sign. Saturn here takes almost 30 years to go through a whole Saturn cycle. This Saturn cycle is called the Saturn Return. A lot of people know about that if you watch this channel. Let's see, other cycles. They're all cycles. Everything's whizzing around all the time, but it's an infinite number, an array of patterns, and they just spin around and around and around. The thing about the next few years, basically where we are right now, in fact, where we really started in January 2020, that's when the real bomb dropped. That's when the big bug was dropped on planet Earth, and it set off what amounts to a massive biological weapon that affected the whole of planet Earth. And we, excuse me, sorry, we can't undo what's been done. So we have to adapt and modify and grow and mature from there. And that's what's happening. Here we are, let's see, almost 2 years later. And I'm pleased to say that we are starting to see cracks in the system. And that's because right now we have the Sun and Saturn over here in Aquarius right now here on early February 2022. But that, of course, energy moves on. And so right now, today, the Aquarius energy is very, very strong, and it's about how the Aquarian themes across planet Earth are being tested. Saturn in Aquarius and the big flashlight called the Sun is casting a very bright light on this subject. And I think it's very beautiful and perfectly timed and appropriate that this massive freedom rally began over here last month in all that massive stellium in Capricorn over in Canada, where all these truckers gathered up in Ottawa, Canada, to rally for their freedoms and recovering their rights as human beings. And within a matter of days, that theme spread across the whole world. And right now, today, across Western Europe, almost every country is starting to wind back its mandates in concert with the demands and having witnessed the power of the people over there in Canada. Sadly, this is not really being reported in the United States, and the vast bulk of American population are oblivious to everything that we talk about here. Sadly, America and Americans are the last people to seem to understand how bad things really, really are for the world. The thing is, it is America that's going through the Pluto return. And what happens to the United States is affecting the rest of the world. And that's going to happen on a political scale and a financial scale on a monumental level that's never been observed before in human existence. So anyway, it's happening now. And the reason is, I think, is because this process of evolution, before 1776, 4th of July, nothing existed that was called the United States except a coalition of states. But when things were, let's say, formalized and documented in this thing here, that in America we call it the Constitution, and there's the Declaration of Independence and so on, this became a founding document which crystallized everything on a planetary scale across the whole of Earth. And even to this date, there is no other single country on Earth that has what we have, okay? There are a lot of other countries on Earth that, kind of mimic what we have, and they respect they have, and they want what we have, but they don't actually have it. I'm not a constitutional law expert, but some of the things that I understand, like if you read through this, we are very lucky in that we have enshrined in the highest levels of political office, we have enshrined the right to freedom of speech, the freedom of the press, the right to happiness, the right to self-determination, the right to remain silent, the right to, let's say, lawful search and seizure, and the right to be, let's say, in a court, innocent until proven guilty. Also, we have the right to defend and protect ourselves, our bodies, our people, our properties against enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, that's where things get a little bit different, because there's nowhere else on planet Earth that has a legalized mandate that allows an American citizen to bear arms, carry weapons, anything from a handgun up to, a full-blown rifle, shotguns, and things like that. So the arms business is very big in America. We have this thing called the military-industrial complex. And for better or worse, we have pressured the rest of the world into a state of hegemonic, let's say, submission in order to accommodate the interests of North America. Now, for the most part, we've done it in a way that has benefited a lot of places. But there's a dark, dark shadow side effect that has been perpetrated since 1913, when the Federal Reserve was institutionalized in America. That was the very beginning, okay, of the downward cycle, where I think we talked about this. Let me just see if I've got some of those really old charts. Give me a second. I'm going to go back over here. I don't want to go too deep into these things right now. There's the Donald stuff. There's China stuff. There's all the pains. Here we go. Here's one of my charts about the time period that we're entering right now. This is kind of a mess, okay? But here we are. This is 2020, when the biological weapon was dropped, and the whole of planet Earth went into massive labor pains. Pluto was in Capricorn, 24 degrees. And now we have gone through this intense period where we're entering 2022 and heading into 2023. And there's a moment of critical mass here, okay? There are several moments of critical mass where Pluto is hovering around 24, 25, 26, 27, 28 degrees of Capricorn, but eventually it flips into 0 degrees Aquarius over here in early or mid 2024. So the reason I was talking about the moon over here and how it moves, 2.5 days. With Pluto, it takes about 250 years. So when Pluto events happen on Earth, they appear to happen extremely slowly. And the most obvious Pluto events are, you could go back in history, but for the sake of this video, it started in January 2020 when Pluto was around here, and it's going to wrap out in early 2024 over here. And so that's like a 4-year period. This little section in the chart represents about a 4-year period through which the United States is going to go through its Pluto return and come out the other side. And basically, it's going to be a rebirth back into the Aquarius theme again when Pluto enters Aquarius. Now, if you know, this was a very turbulent time in global history, and there was revolutions all over the world as the concept and theme and the desire for freedom became widespread. Well, the same thing is going to be happening here, but on a much bigger scale, because the oppression that happened, that was being imposed on the United States of America back before 1776 came from here, this little place called England. And England at the time was extremely powerful. They had the British Empire that went all over the world, over here, 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 parts of here, and all over here. And including the British law, which dominates global law, okay? But eventually, what they call the Founding Fathers built up this document, we call it the Declaration of Independence, and they wrote the Constitution a few years later, basically to enshrine everything, what things are really about over here, which is about we the people. And ever since that, look at it back from 1776, 4th of July, the Declaration of Independence and the creation of the Constitution a few years later, the moment that birth of that new phenomenon, that new entity, which now today we call the United States, the moment of that birth, it is already dying. Just like a human cycle. The minute you're born, you start dying, but you do go through cycles where you reach like peak, let's say, power, and then things fade. And at the very last stages, you have the energies of maturity and indulgence. We now have so much wealth and so much power that we have basically become slaves to that energy, and it has become extremely perverse, and it is utterly corrupt. And that is exactly what is supposed to happen in a Pluto cycle. It birth, procreation, and fulfillment, and then death. So what we're witnessing essentially is a slow motion death of the United States as we know it. And what will happen is a rebirth of the United States into a new version. So in these closing years over here, from about 2020, well, in fact, from 2008, when Pluto went into Capricorn, everybody on Earth is now aware that there is something very sick and perverse going on in the global political sphere and the global banking system. Okay, if you're not aware, you need to become aware. Okay, and it's reaching a moment of critical mass. And what's actually happening is it's fracturing. Basically, the status quo, as represented by the shadow side of Pluto and Capricorn, they have started to realize that their massive systematic, let's say, machine that they call the Fed, the Federal Reserve Banking System, it's basically built on fiat currency, and eventually they turn it into an art form. And the art form is best expressed through lies, deception, betrayal, more theft and deception. that's a whole other video about how the actual mechanism works, about how the global banking system and the global corporatocracy and the global elites, for example, like the Council on Foreign Relations and all those WEFs and UN and WHOs and all those totalitarian organizations that are lusting and lusting and lusting for a complete totalitarian takeover of the world. Well, that's all becoming in question because everyone on Earth is sick of it. What happened back in 1776 is that the folks over here basically said, "Uck you. You are a bunch of totalitarian, murderous, megalomaniac slime, and we are not your slaves. You can't own us. You're not going to tax us. We're not going to do that, play that stupid game anymore. In fact, we've decided to draw a line in the sand. We're calling it the Declaration of Independence. We are now free people." Okay? We're still, North America is still based on the British culture, but it's much more expanded than that now. It's like a globalized culture. And it shows in our population, our politics, our economy, and everything. But essentially, when they did the Declaration of Independence, 4th of July, 1776, that was basically "Uck you" to King George over here. Okay. Now we've come 245 years roughly later to the next Pluto return. And exactly the same pattern is happening again, but it isn't just America. What's happening is the rest of the world is starting to wake up and say, "You know what? Uck you." The thing is that the people who are at the very top of the pinnacle of the "uck you" crowd, the elites, they are amorphous and spread around. And it's mostly consists of the corporatocracy, which is the mega corporations that own all the other corporations and sub-corporations and so on, working in collusion with the global centralized banking system, which works in collusion with the global political systems in order to preserve their status quo. It is a pyramid of power. The thing is, it's all based on fraud, theft, lies, deception, as perpetrated, designed, and propagated all across the world through the fiat global financial system that we have today. And the thing is that the people at the top of this pyramid have realized it's all falling apart. We can't do this forever because we are creating basically a nuclear bomb financially that's eventually going to implode. And so that's what's happening. And they can't stop the implosion. So they're trying to get out of it by basically taking their game to the next level. They realize we're never going to pay off all of these debts. The fiat global banking financial system, we have to either make it bigger, badder, and more evil than ever before, or it's going to implode. And those people at the very, very top are scared. And they've decided to copy what China is doing, which is to basically make the monster even bigger and more ferocious. So what's happening is this creation of the Fedwire. It's like a CBDC, central bank digital currency, which is what they've already done in China. They've been planning and talking about this for decades, but it's come to a head now. Anyway, the point of this video is I'm trying to indicate that everything is exactly as it should be. Why is that so? How is that so? Because it can't be any other way. This is just simply the evolution of humanity, but we're charting it here. And you can see these beautiful correlations. That's why I like doing this astrology stuff. Let me see if I can find another one of my doodles. This might not make much sense. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. Oh, look, here's an astrodoodle here's a doodle. These are the globalists. Their game is over and they're terrified. They know it's falling apart. So they're trying to build their power. But the more they build their power, other people like us are starting to I don't want to play this game. And so what's happening is a parallel financial world that is completely decentralized. And that's called cryptocurrencies, okay? They might try to trick you to thinking that CBDCs are cryptocurrencies. They're not. That's just more and more fiat money done, executed on a digital ledger. Oh, look, here's another one of my doodles from many videos ago. Look, these are the banksters. IMF, United Nations, Bank of International Settlements, the World Economic Forum. WB, what's WB? I forgot. Anyway, all of them are working to create their own CBDC. In other words, it's basically game on, same as usual, but we'll make it look really fancy and digital. And the whole point of the CBDC is that they can track you. It's like what's happening in China. All the money becomes programmable. And so they essentially own you, and you, or let's say we the people, no longer have any privacy. We are complete and utter slaves of these people. In the United States, they're creating something called the Fed Now. And what's happening in the Fed now is going to spread all across the world. We can't stop this. Okay, it is going to happen. What's also happening simultaneously is that we, the people, are creating an alternative parallel world. Okay. Here's another one of my doodles. 1913 is when it really started. It's falling apart in 2020. It's going to be completely dead and rebuilt by 2024. And at the same time, we're going to have a completely alternate world. Oh, now this might be the one that I was looking at. Oh, yeah, I have to join these two charts together. Let me see if I can do this. Hold on. Okay, I'm just going to do it. I know this is messy. I look like an absolute amateur. And there are other channels out there that do super beautiful, gorgeous financial videos and presentations. But look at this. You see this? Here we go. Mess. Here we go. You see that? So I made this many months ago. And I also wrote my little book about this, okay? That's why I have my email. It's called A Little Book About. But anyway, as you can see here, this is the implosion of the status quo. And this is the emergence of the alternative reality. This line represents time, especially this point of critical mass over here, which is the last 4 years of the Pluto cycle. And the reason I did it this way, the reason I put this diagram this way, is to illustrate that the really bad things are happening at the same time as the really good things, because we're actually going to have a rebirth of global finance, which is built around sovereign wealth. In other words, your wealth, your money. It's going to take many years for it to propagate across the world. But the moment that we're talking about here is the death of the old and the birth of the new. That's the critical time period where Pluto goes through its death throes at the end of the Pluto cycle for the United States, the Pluto return. And isn't it a coincidence that the Pluto return of the United States is matching exactly with the collapse of the global financial and political system? So going forward, we're going to start to see the emergence of DeFi, decentralized finance. So I've already done a lot of homework on that, and maybe I'll make another video about that another day, but I've learned a lot, and I'm very pleased with what I've learned, and I'll share what I can. But we're ending up into a war. Well, it's an invisible war between honest money and fake money. The fake money, as propagated by, these folks that I was talking about, that is going to do its best to try and live on. And then the honest money, which is what I'm interested in, will be how we find our way forward outside of the status quo, outside of the existing system. And because I don't want to be a slave, I refuse to be a part of the status quo. I refuse to be a part of that game where I am literally a debt cow on a debt farm, okay? It's no longer acceptable. I think eventually more and more people across the world will just wake up to this stuff slowly. We're already ahead of the game, luckily, but I just wanted to illustrate. Let me get back to the video here. So why this date? Well, I'll show you. Number one, let me go over here. I want to say hi to everybody. Hold on. Greetings, this is Terra Illumination. It's, I think I said it's Friday night, 4th of February, 2022, Las Vegas, Nevada. Now, what I'm going to share with you was inspired by Path Traveler, who sent me the original data from a video, and I extracted the file online. It's public information, but it's something that your average person wouldn't stumble on. So I'm just grabbing it while I can, and I'm just going to squash into a few details, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. And it isn't like I'm sitting here making up this stuff anymore, like, oh, he's into astrology, he's out of his mind, okay? It's not that way at all. Everything we've been talking about, everything I wrote about is happening. All the worst of the worst and the very bad stuff is actually happening. And the intentions of the folks at the top of the pyramid is to increase the pressure to a point of complete totalitarian, authoritarian command and control of every human being on this planet. Basically, what they're trying to do is take the industrial farming of global finance that they've built over the last 120 years, and they're going to take it to the next level, where it is globalized industrial farming of human beings. Basically, the folks at the very, very top have figured out we can farm the whole of humanity. We don't have to just do it piecemeal through the existing status quo. We can do it wholesale across planet Earth, even with the 2 billion people who are unbanked right now. And they're basing it on the Chinese model, which is based on everything that they learned from America. Because every economy on Earth has a central bank now, based on the American system of fraud, deception, lies, betrayal. And they work in collusion with their government and their corporations. And it's how they farm we the people. But their plan is to take it to the next level. Yes. So I want to thank Path Traveler, and I can't remember the name of the channel. But anyway, I've got the document, and I'm going to share this with you. But before we do that, I want to go back to the chart. I'm probably sharing a few other things that I might have got here from Love Triber too. So I'm going to say thank you, Love Triber, as well, in case I forgot. But anyway, let's do this. Now, over here on this chart, we're focusing on November 2023. I'm actually focusing on the 13th of November because it's more or less a new moon. Now, at that new moon, we're talking about Sun, Moon, and Mars in Scorpio in a very hard opposition to Uranus and Taurus. So as some of you know, this is directly on the global financial axis, the world of other people's money in the shadow side, which represents the global corporatocracy, banks, debt, federal bank, and all the evil consortium, okay, that works together as one organism. And it's opposing Uranus and Taurus. Now, Uranus and Taurus here representing revolutionary upheaval in the global banking system. That's literally what it means. And it's happening on this date. So this date here is a moment of maximum opposition, extreme, the maximum opposition that you can get. A week or two before, a week or two after, it's still the same energy building up. But right here, it's at its peak power. Okay. Now, what this indicates to me is that there is going to be a massive but very invisible, secretive event going on across planet Earth regarding global finances. And we, the people, will be completely oblivious to it. I'm going to show you something now that I was talking about. Let me see if I can do this technically. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, here it is. With any luck, you should be able to see something on your screen. It looks like a formal letter. Well, that's exactly what it is. Let me tuck myself up here somewhere. Anyway, what this letter is, it's a very recent letter, January 3rd, 2022. I don't know if you can see my little arrow spinning around. And it is from the American Bankers Association, okay? It's an association that represents all the major banks in America, okay? And of course, they work very closely with the US Federal Reserve. This fellow, Stephen Keneally, is the Senior Vice President of Payments. And what they're doing is they're writing to Anna Misbach, Secretary of the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. Okay, we're talking about the very, very tippity top of the pinnacle of the global financial system. Okay, and it's just a very civil letter. But let me just read some of this. It goes into, it's got 4 pages. I'll show you, and it gets pretty complex. A lot of it's above my head, but I'm going to give you the main theme. Okay. Basically what's happening, it's about a conversation between the big retail banks of America. So you can think of things like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, US Bank, PNC, and so on, Goldman, everything. And they're basically saying, dear Ms. Misbach, blah, blah, blah. The American Bankers Association appreciates the opportunity to comment on the notice of adoption of message format and request for comment notice regarding the FedWire funds service, otherwise known as FedWire, and the ISO 20022. The American Bankers Association supports the migration to the new message format that allows for greater detail to be associated with each payment. Greater detail means everything in your life, okay? Because everything will be tracked in your life, because there's usually some kind of financial transaction that is associated with almost every aspect of your life, okay? So this looks very innocuous, but this is terrifying. We believe that a well-executed implementation plan is essential for the switchover in November 2023. And recommendations to achieve this are included in this response. Okay, so there's the giveaway. The switchover is November 2023. They're going to flip the switch. The American banking system and the American Federal Reserve are going to flip the switch on our existing system. It'll be totally invisible. We'll never know what happens. We, the people, will be oblivious. The notice plans for making the migration to FedWire on a single day, no earlier than November 2023, instead of the phased approach originally considered in 2018. Okay, they've already been planning this, okay, for a long time. A single day switch means that all participants in the system must have thoroughly tested their systems rigorously, or the system will be disrupted. In other words, we have to make sure that if we're going to continue our fraud, deception, lies, betrayal, monopoly, and hegemony with global finance, it has to work perfectly. Otherwise, it could backfire badly. Okay? So how are we going to do this so that no one else on earth knows it's happening? Okay? Questions posed by the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System. Okay, so remember, this ABA has been chatting with the Federal Reserve, but they're listing the questions here in a formal way. Questions that were posed by the Board of the Federal Reserve System. Question posed, number one, they're asking, the American Bankers Association. Hey, listen, bankers, we're the Fed. Oh, we just want to check up with you a couple things. Do you support the single day implementation strategy? If not, what strategy would you prefer? Answer: yes, we, the ABA, the American Bankers Association, we support the single day migration as the best strategy. Okay, great. Now, should the reserve banks implement ISO 20022 for Fedwire in November 2023? If you prefer a different date, please provide a rationale. No, it's all right. Yes, November 2023 is the preferred timeline for Fedwire to migrate. It is important to launch on the same day as CHIPS, the private sector wire clearing service. The whole idea is that they have to flip the switch on one day at one exact moment in time to switch to the system we have now, to this new globalized tyrannical monster system, beast system. Okay, it says here, excuse me, the American Bankers Association is the voice of the nation's $23 trillion banking industry, which is composed of small, regional, and large banks that together employ more than 2 million people and safeguard $19 trillion in deposits and extend nearly $11 trillion in loans. Okay, so this is not a small thing. Next, let's get back to the dates, because that's where the charts get fun. Yes, November. Okay, so this is an extension of this paragraph replied here. So the ABA, the banks are saying, actually, we request 2 specific weekends in November 2023 be considered for this transition. We recommend avoiding launching on Veterans Day weekend, as larger than expected volume would be expected on Monday. We also recommend avoiding the weekend following Thanksgiving, because larger volume is expected on Monday. So with those restrictions in mind, we recommend that the migration takes place over the weekend of the 3rd and 4th of November 2023. That's the giveaway. That's the exact date they would like to have the launch. Now, if this date needs to be pushed back for any reason, a backup weekend migration can be scheduled for, let's say 2 weeks later, November 17th, 18th, 2023, okay? This allows for 2 weeks to address any remaining tiny niggly little issues and still meet the target launch date of November 2023. Woohoo! Yeah. Oh, and then the Fed is asking, dear bankers, should the reserve banks and blah blah clearinghouses for Fedwire and chips should we flip the switch on the same day? And the bankers are saying, absolutely, yes. This is essential to the efficient implementation for both clearing services, the reserve banks and the main clearinghouses. They have to coordinate closely, actually identically. Other questions from the Fed. Do you have any resource restraints or challenges to meet the November 2023 deadline? Like, we're working on Swift, or, FedNow going live. And then there's a huge reply here. I'm not going to read the rest of this, but it goes into a lot more details about the implementation of the new banking system. Thank you, Stephen. There we go. Anyway, let me get back to the dates here. So I'm going to stop the share for a second. Go back over here. So, I haven't looked at exact details of calendars up to there on a normal calendar, but over here in my ephemeris and astrology astrodoodles, I have figured that the dates that they're talking about over here is early November, which is before the new moon, and later November, which just after the new moon. And so it's like right in the middle is the new moon itself. But either way, the thing that we're talking about is on such a massive global scale that, a week or two, a couple of weeks in here would make sense. But the real super ultra hotspot is the 13th of November, 2023. And the way I see it here, it's the death, this date, this exact date here represents the death of the existing global banking status quo and the deliberate switch to a new global banking status quo. Scorpio represents the global banking, lending, borrowing system over here on top, that exists on top of the corporatocracy, on top of the governments, on top of every country. So this is an extremely powerful energy field here because it represents global finance, and it is heavily opposed to Uranus and Taurus over here. It's a massive wake up, okay, and it's revolutionary. This is literally revolution, and we are pinpointing a date, but we can't pinpoint outcomes because right now it's February 2022, and this is going all the way to the end of 2023, and so a lot's going to happen in that time, and there's going to be a lot more global upheaval on the political scale and the global financial scale. Up until those points. And the world of cryptocurrencies is going to become much bigger and much more powerful and unstoppable. And so we have this crunch that's happening, like on the chart I showed you, where it's the death of the old and the birth of the new, and they're happening simultaneously. So that's the date. Just wanted to share that with you. So mark your calendars. And if you know any, Federal Reserve bankers or high-powered financial, YouTube channel servers or whatever, please let them have a look at this. And let's mark dates because so far, I've been hoping and dreaming to have something specific like this. And luckily, Path Traveler is an extremely good sleuth and backed up and supported by Love Triber. And so I feel very lucky to be connected with them because this is what I discovered. And also thanks to the channel and the person. By the way, let me go back over here. Okay, now I've made my point. Okay. Oh, let me just finish this. Okay, you see the North Node over here? By that time, it's going to be the North Node is in Aries. Okay, about the individuals. Okay. So my feeling is that over the next time period, as we get closer and closer to November 2023, we're going to be going through about a year and a half of the North Node over here. I don't know if you can see my arrow moving around, but the North Node over here moving through Taurus into Aries. Now, there is going to come a point, I haven't finished it yet, sorting out exactly on the chart, but there's going to come a point where the Taurus North Node that we have now, which is roughly here, it's going to conjoin with Uranus and Taurus over the next year and a half. And that is going to be a moment of critical mass on a global financial scale. There's going to be some kind of major headline global eruption. Now, it might be invisible headlines behind the scenes because so much of this is secret. Okay, Scorpio, secrets and all that. But either way, it's going to happen. And my feeling it's going to happen with cryptocurrencies, where it's going to become very obvious that honest money is now facing off with fake money. And you won't be able to stop it. It's like game on. Okay. So we're heading towards that moment of critical mass, which would be the equivalent of 4th of July, 1776. So these next few years are going to be very interesting on a global scale. It's historical on a global scale. Okay, of course, every day is, but this one is extra special. Anyway, let me go back over here. I wanted to say, oh, what the heck was it now? Let me stop the share here. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this actual document, this is the real deal, okay? It was provided to another financial channel, and that financial channel is called 3T something. Let me see if I can. Yeah, if you want to verify this stuff, let me show you. Okay, here's his channel. I know he looks like a psycho, but this is the video that I'm talking about. I hope you can see my arrow. It's from a few weeks ago, okay? But this is serious hardcore. I highly recommend you watch the whole video, this one here, because it goes much deeper and it's much scarier, and it brings some of the realities that I'm talking about, okay? So I'm going to stop that share again and go back over to blah, blah over here. But anyway, let me check here with you guys. So again, thanks, Path Traveler. Thank you, Love Trevor. I'm bringing all this to my attention. It's really been a juicy project. I feel like a dog with a bone. This is fun. So if I've got the nerve, or if I can figure out how to do it, I want to get this video sent over to people like some of my favorite channels, like Neil McCoy Ward or Barbara Goldsmith and Pam Gregory, because they're both into financial astrology. Okay, and there's also Mark Moss and George Gammon and a few others. Chances are they won't even look at the links, because, you know, I don't want to demean myself, but there's not a lot of people who believe in the stuff that we believe in here, or who understand it. But I guarantee, we've touched a nerve here, okay? So I guess the way I'd like to wrap this up is, like, please, everybody, prepare yourselves. Please understand that if you're okay with having your whole life completely owned and controlled by a bunch of invisible bankers on an extreme level that we've never seen before, way beyond where we are today. Already we are today on a massive global debt farm in collusion with a massive global slave camp. I've talked about that, okay? But what the folks at the very top of the pyramid want to do is they want to take it to the next level. It's basically globalized totalitarianism. You can thank Klaus and Xi and all those folks at the very, very tippity top, Council on Foreign Relations. And, you know, it goes on and on and on. I'm just going to leave it at that for now, okay? I've rambled on enough. I'm going to wish you all the very best. I'm going to go back and leave you with the chart, and you can ponder that. And here it is, folks. But yeah, we'll follow up on this and see what happens. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.